I mean, the caterpillar isn't walking around saying, man, I'll someday soon be a butterfly. Because, as long as he's busy being a caterpillar, he can't be a butterfly. It's only once the caterpillarness is done that one starts to be a butterfly. I was remembering that one night where I met her outside of Tolly. I had come running up to her and kind of swept her off her feet, and we were both so giddy, and she said, "You smell like weed," in this cute and happy and free voice. And we were happy and talking and kissing, and I was talking about how she's the original punk, and I was looking at the buildings and talking about how we got here too fast, how 200 years ago the most advanced technology was the railroad, and now there is all of this. I had this sense of not understanding the world and feeling so small. But we were small together, and we had each other, and that was more than enough for me. That is one of my favorite memories of our relationship. And yeah, the song Sleepwalk came on just now, and I felt like I need to let myself grieve for a minute, because I did lose something really important and meaningful and beautiful and real. We saved each other. Both of us had nothing to live for when we met, and then we fell in love, and then we had something to live for. And, you know, you can't live for someone else. It doesn't work. Eventually you have to figure out how to live for yourself and love yourself. But we helped each other do that. We wouldn't be who we are now without each other. When we were broken, we were perfect for each other. But then we helped to heal each other. And the healed versions of ourselves are people who don't love each other in that way. That relationship was a beautiful part of my life. And now it's gone. And we still love each other, but it's in a different way. And the romantic part of our relationship is gone. That part of my life is gone. And honestly, I'm grateful, because it was a really painful stretch of time, and I'm so much happier now that I'm not pretending to be someone I'm not, and I'm in a body I love and that feels like home, and I'm not weighed down by the burden of being in a relationship with her. Because honestly, at the beginning it felt like a burden. And at the end it felt like a burden. And many times throughout it felt like a burden. Not that I ever admitted that at the time. But there were also a lot of moments that were really magical and beautiful, and that I was happy in. That time in my life feels like the song Embryonic Journey by Jefferson Airplane. Beautiful and formative and life-changing moments of youth. Feeling of nostalgia for that general time has been present lately. With the leaves falling and the trees dying, there's a sense of grief and loss for those years in my life, those times, those events. It feels like the person I was during those years was the caterpillar. I thought I knew everything I needed to know. I had a pretty strong sense of identity. I had created this really nice image of a lovable goofball who was a little weird, but in a fun way that made other people happy. But underneath it all, I was miserable, and I had no idea what I was doing, and I wanted to die.
The caterpillar's head is about to split wide open. The caterpillar was an eating machine. An identity rolled up like a sock and discarded.
The caterpillar doesn't say, "Well, now, I'm going to climb into this cocoon and come out a butterfly." It's just an inevitable process. It's inevitable. It's just happening. Things kept getting worse, and it was showing more and more. I couldn't hide it anymore. And I think I was scaring people. I felt crazy. And then I came out. And that helped a lot, but I was still with her. I don't think either of us really understood the implications of what was going to happen.
The caterpillar's head is about to split wide open.
When I went home for the summer, I was going by Alex because I wanted to get hired. And my house became unsafe, and I was on the verge of being kicked out, and she was really the only person I had in my life. I was in survival mode. I did not want to be trans. And by the time I got back to school, I was seriously repressing myself again. Even though I was still going by Alice, I was not presenting the way I wanted at all, and I was just grinding and working and not feeling my emotions. And I was so fucking high all the time. Doing everything I could to not feel it. But the pain was there, and it was getting louder and louder, and I was more and more disoriented. It was different than when I was younger. It was darker and deeper and more painful, and I was losing every sense of familiarity that I knew. The identity that I had built was collapsing, was dying, and it was a painful process. There was this long stretch of time where I wasn't the person that I was before, but I wasn't the person I am now either. I was at this in-between point. I was no one. I felt like a void, and the world around me felt like a void. Nothing made sense. And I was still with her. We were both unhappy and we knew it. But we loved each other so much. And we were so ingrained in each other's lives. We didn't know what we would do without each other. We had become really codependent. And we were both holding on to this person, this identity, that didn't really exist anymore. We talked about breaking up a few times, but we couldn't bring ourselves to actually do it. Spent a long time convincing ourselves that there was still something left. When we finally did break up, it was so painful at first, but then there was this enormous lifting. I felt so much lighter and so much more free than I had in so long. I felt like I could finally emerge from the chrysalis. Finally come into myself. Do you realize that when you go on that journey in order to get to the destination, you can never get to the destination? In the process, you must die. The person who I was before has their own life, separate from mine. They live in another time, another dimension, another reality. There's a part of that person that exists in me now, and there's a part of me that existed in that person. We're tied to each other, but those threads are quite faint now. And it's not just about transition or gender, that's really such a small part of it. The way I see the world has shifted. The void/chrysalis stage was when I started the journey. I started meditating, cleaned up my diet, started exercising. I committed myself to nature, spirituality, art, and music. But I didn't realize that I was going to die. And I was stuck in the void for so long, because I was refusing to let old identity die. I was doing all these things, making these changes in my life, but I couldn't actually feel any positive effects because I was still clinging on to some old identity. It was only once I surrendered and allowed myself to shatter, that I could start to pick up the pieces and heal, to remember who I am. This summer I got to live at school alone and work in nature and meditate and make music and art, and I finally got on estrogen. I understand now how I want to live. I understand what makes me happy, how to take care of myself, and how to take care of the world around me in a direct and practical way. And I can finally exist in my body without wanting to tear my skin off. Once I started estrogen, I was able to feel the positive habits that I had developed so much more. It felt like I was born again. Like I was in a prison cell for my entire life and had finally been freed and was seeing the world for the first time. I am so in love with everything. I'm so in love with being. Everything feels new and exciting. But at the same time it feels familiar and comforting. The world feels that way and my body feels that way. And I'm obviously still learning and growing and making mistakes. But I understand who I am more now, and I understand what I want more now. I feel so deeply supported by the universe. I am most often in a state of presence and gratitude. I am calm, focused, and trusting myself.